I never thought a dinner invitation could feel like a trap. It was a Tuesday morning when I got the call. My mother's voice, unusually soft, crackled through the speaker like warm honey. "Natalie, sweetheart, we're having a family dinner next weekend. You should come. It's been so long since we were all together." For most people, that would sound comforting. Nostalgic, even. However, it sent a ripple of unease down my spine. I'm Natalie Hart, 35 years old, founder of a mid-sized tech startup based in San Francisco, and I've spent most of my adult life distancing myself from the family that only ever seemed to pull me back when they needed something, never when they missed me. But something in her tone made me pause. There was a warmth I hadn't heard since I was a teenager. Against my better judgment, I said yes. I cleared my schedule for the weekend, canceled 2 meetings, moved a product pitch. I told myself maybe things had changed. Maybe, this once, I was walking into something real. By Saturday afternoon, I was back in the neighborhood I swore I'd left behind. My parents' house in Davis, California, hadn't changed much. The beige shutters, the faint creak of the porch swing, the well-trimmed hedges that smelled like lemon trees in the summer. I stood on the porch a moment longer than I needed to, steeling myself. My mother, Martha, opened the door with an exaggerated smile. "Natalie, look at you!" Her arms wrapped around me stiffly, her perfume sharp and powdery. Inside, my younger siblings were already seated. Ethan, 32, still dressed like a frat boy in a backwards cap and hoodie, and Kayla, 28, her designer clutch resting delicately beside her untouched glass of wine. "Long time no see, big sis," Ethan said, with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, Natalie," Kayla chimed in, giving me a once-over like I was a new hire at her imaginary fashion company. Dinner smelled incredible. Slow-cooked roast beef, buttery mashed potatoes, Martha's signature cornbread muffins. The table was set beautifully. Crystal glasses, candles, cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. It felt off. The conversation stayed polite for a while. Safe topics, weather, a TV show, someone's friend getting engaged. But the tension in the air clung to me like a wet coat. And then, halfway through the meal, it happened. "To avoid any confusion later on," Ethan began, swirling his wine lazily, "Mom and Dad thought it would be best to tell you now." I blinked. "Tell me what?" He leaned back, clearly enjoying himself. "The will. It's finalized. Everything's going to me and Kayla." I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. I looked at my parents. My father, Richard, stared down at his plate like it was the most fascinating thing in the room. Martha cleared her throat. "We just thought it made the most sense," she said, folding her hands neatly in her lap. "You have your company, your condo. You're stable, Natalie. They need help more than you do." I could feel the room spinning slowly around me, though my body remained still. "What?" I asked again, my voice low. Ethan grinned wider. "Come on, you're loaded. Kayla's been between jobs, and I'm still figuring things out." "Figuring things out?" I snapped. "You've switched majors 5 times. You dropped out of 2 colleges, and you've been unemployed for, what is it now, a year?" Kayla shrugged, looking bored. "6 months. And at least I don't define people by their resumes. I define people by what they contribute." I paid off the student loan on his house. I paid the property tax when Dad got laid off. I covered Kayla's credit card debt. What was it, $6,000? Because she said it was an emergency. "That was your choice," Kayla replied. "You begged me." My mother's face hardened. "Natalie, don't make this happen. We thought this through. We love all of you, but they need support. We don't." I gave you $40,000 to renovate the Lake Tahoe cabin. You said it was a family investment. You said, "We said a lot of things," my father mumbled, still not meeting my eyes. And just like that, the truth crystallized. They didn't invite me for dinner to reconnect. They invited me to sever the cord on their terms, to let me know I was officially no longer part of the picture, except when the bills came due. I looked at each of them. My mother, her jaw set, was already playing the victim. My father, silent as ever. Ethan, smug and satisfied. Kayla, distant and disinterested. I felt something cold settle over me. A long, slow breath escaped my chest. "You're right," I said finally. "I don't need your inheritance." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Then why the meltdown?" "Because," I whispered, my voice sharp as glass, "I finally understand what I've been to this family." I stood, slowly pushing back my chair. The screech of the legs against the floor, all of them flinch. A bank account, an ATM, a safety net. "Natalie," Martha's voice broke, but I cut her off. "You didn't love me. You just loved what I gave you. And now that you think you don't need that anymore, you're done with me." Kayla scoffed. "Drama queen." I turned toward the door. "If you walk out," my mother warned, "don't expect to come back." I stopped and looked over my shoulder, my voice ice. I never felt welcome here in the first place. And then I left. When I got back to my condo in San Francisco that night, I couldn't even cry. I unlocked the door, dropped my keys into the bowl by the entrance, and walked straight to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat at the bar stool without even turning the lights on. The city glowed faintly outside the window, soft gold and steel blue. But inside, I sat in silence, numb. How many years had I kept them afloat? I opened my banking app and started scrolling through my recurring payments. $1,500 a month for the mortgage. $600 more for utilities, electricity, water, internet. Every holiday, I sent over gift cards and paid for Kayla's emergency flights and Ethan's ridiculous subscription boxes. Once, I even paid a $3,000 deposit on a lease for a car my father never drove. They were never grateful. They just expected it. My fingers hovered over the screen for a second, then tapped. Cancel recurring payments. Confirm. Again and again. The screen flashed. Successfully canceled. And for the first time in years, I felt something like relief, like cutting a rope that had been around my chest for too long. They'd find out soon enough. The next morning, I ignored the first call from my mother, then the second, then the third. By the fifth, I muted my phone and let it ring out. I made a pot of coffee and stared at the bubbling surface like it might tell me what came next. I knew the calls weren't about me. Not really. They weren't going to say they were sorry. They weren't going to take anything back. By noon, a voicemail popped up. My father's voice. "Natalie, you need to reconsider. Your mother is very upset. This can't be over a small misunderstanding. We're family." A small misunderstanding. The phrase was so absurd that I laughed. A quiet, bitter sound that felt like it didn't belong to me. That afternoon, Kayla called. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts. "Kayla, you're seriously cutting everyone off? Over this?" "Kayla, you're pathetic, Natalie. You're rich and acting like we stole from you." "Kayla, if you didn't want to help, you should have just said so. You played the saint, and now you're the villain. Congrats." I stared at the screen, stunned by the sheer audacity, the lack of self-awareness. It was like they were all reading from the same warped script. In their version of reality, I was selfish, greedy, and heartless. The irony was almost funny. When Ethan called, I answered. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I wanted to hear what he'd say. I wanted to hear it straight from his mouth. "Ethan," I said, my voice flat. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he snapped. "What am I doing? I'm taking back what's mine." "You're disgusting. You're punishing mom and dad because of money. You're just a greedy leech." "Money?" I said slowly. "I've spent over $400,000 on this family over the last decade. I've passed up promotions, travel, property, all so you and Kayla could stumble around and mom and dad could keep living beyond their means. And now that I say no, I'm a leech?" "You're a snake," he growled. "You think you can walk away and leave everyone drowning? You think there won't be consequences?" And then he hung up. The line went dead, but the chill his words left behind lingered. I stared at my phone. My hand hovered over the contacts list. One by one, I opened each name. Mom, Dad, Ethan, Kayla, and I blocked them. It was like cutting anchors off a boat. I slept well that night. No guilt, no dread, no 3 a.m. texts asking for help, just this once. 3 weeks passed. I threw myself into work, started cooking again, bought a camera I'd been eyeing for years, and signed up for a weekend photography class. I walked alone in Golden Gate Park. I sipped lattes in the Mission District without checking my phone. I lived, but peace never lasts long when it threatens someone else's control. On a gray Friday afternoon, just before a pitch meeting, I got a text from an unknown number. Mom, the family is having an important meeting. You need to be there. 7 p.m., the house. This is not an invitation. It's your responsibility. I stared at it, heat building in my chest. Responsibility? It wasn't curiosity that made me reply. It wasn't hope. It was anger, that quiet, shaking kind that burns beneath your ribs and doesn't let go. I texted back one word. Fine. I knew it would be a trap, but I wanted to see their faces one last time. I pulled into the driveway just before 7. Ethan's BMW and Kayla's Mini Cooper were already parked with smug perfection. As I stepped up to the porch, the door opened before I even knocked. My mother's smile was tight and practiced. Natalie, you came home. This isn't home, I said, brushing past her. Inside, the living room was arranged like a courtroom. My father sat in the center, trying to look composed. Ethan slouched on the couch, and Kayla was already twirling her hair like she was the lead actress in some courtroom drama. So? I said, folding my arms. Let's hear it. My father cleared his throat. We need to resolve this, for the sake of the family. I let out a short, dry laugh. You mean the fact that I stopped funding your lifestyles? Martha's voice dipped into a rehearsed gentleness. You overreacted. Your father and I only wanted what was best. Cutting me out of your will was what's best? Ethan scoffed. Did you even think before cutting us off like that? Selfish and childish, Natalie. I snapped my eyes toward him. Selfish? I've kept this family above water for 10 years. Kayla folded her arms. You're just mad because you didn't get anything in the will. Let's be honest. My hands trembled at my sides, but I clenched them into fists. No, I'm mad because I gave everything, and when I asked for a little fairness, you called me a villain. My mother stood, her voice sharp. If you walk out that door, don't expect to come back. I walked to the doorway without looking back. My hand wrapped around the knob. I turned my head slowly. I never felt welcome here in the first place. Then I walked out. But what came next, I never expected. I didn't even get the chance to breathe before the next blow landed. When I pulled up to my apartment that night, something felt off. From the street, my door looked strange, slightly sunken around the frame, coated in a dull, chalky texture. I walked up the steps cautiously. Then I saw it. Expanding foam, a thick, dried mass of gray-white insulation, was crammed into every crack around the door. The seams, the keyhole, even the bottom gap. It had hardened like cement, gluing the door shut, sealing me out of my own home. My jaw tightened. I didn't have to guess. My phone shook in my hand as I opened my building's security app and rewound the footage from the hallway camera. My heart started pounding before I even saw the screen. There he was, Ethan, wearing a gray hoodie and a backwards cap like a teenage prankster, smirking at the camera like he thought he was untouchable. In his hand, a can of foam sealant. He sprayed the door gleefully, layering it like frosting on a cake, even did a little spin at the end. I stood frozen in front of the sealed door. This wasn't a tantrum anymore. It was a threat. They wanted to break me, intimidate me, make me crawl back to the family and apologize for daring to stand up. They didn't realize I wasn't the same Natalie anymore. I took a breath, saved the footage, snapped high-res screenshots of his face from the video, then I called the police. 30 minutes later, a uniformed officer stood in front of my ruined apartment door. He had a calm, unreadable face, but there was a flicker of discomfort in his eyes when he saw the foam. "You want to file a formal complaint?" he asked, flipping open his notepad. I nodded. "This isn't a prank. This is harassment, vandalism, trespassing. I want to press charges." He hesitated just a beat. "The suspect, Ethan Reynolds. He's your brother?" "Was," I replied, my voice like steel. "Not anymore." The next morning, my father called. "Sweetheart," he said, his tone heavy with forced warmth. "Does it have to go this far?" I leaned against the counter and took a sip of coffee, staring out over the Bay Bridge. "Dad, are you calling to ask me to drop the charges?" "It's just, Ethan was upset. He didn't mean any harm. He's your brother." "He sealed my door shut, Dad. That's not a mistake. That's an attack." But, but what do you want, Natalie? You want to drag your brother into court?" I could hear the frustration rising in his voice, the cracks of panic starting to show. "Actually," I said coolly, "I want $33,000. There was a long pause. Then, "What?" "That's what this will cost. Repairs, legal fees, emotional damages if it drags out. Consider it a very generous settlement." "Natalie, this is extortion." "No," I said with a short laugh. "This is the consequence. Something Ethan's never had to face because you and Mom always covered for him. This time, you can do it again." He sputtered. "This is tearing the family apart." I sighed. "No, Dad. The family tore itself apart when you all decided I was nothing more than a bank account." 3 days later, $33,000 hit my account. No apology, no explanation, just the transaction. I didn't reply, I didn't call. I didn't even check in to see if they were upset. I knew they were. They were probably pacing the living room, arguing, blaming each other for giving in. But I didn't care. Because it wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that, for once, they had to pay for what they did. But of course, they couldn't stop there. Soon after, the social media messages started. DMs from second cousins, childhood friends of Kayla's, and even an old neighbor I barely remembered. Aunt Maggie. "Natalie, I'm disappointed in you. Your parents did so much for you, and you humiliate them like this?" Uncle James. "You don't throw away family over money. That's cold." Cousin Brenda. "Your poor mom is crying every day. She says she might lose the house." I could feel it as I read them, my mother's hand behind it all. She had rewritten the narrative and handed everyone else a script. I wasn't the daughter who supported her family for 10 years. I was the monster who abandoned her poor parents in their time of need. That's when I realized this wasn't just personal anymore. It was reputational warfare. She couldn't control me, so she tried to destroy me socially. I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook, an app I hadn't touched in months. I rarely posted, but this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. I typed slowly, deliberately, every sentence measured. I tried to be a good daughter. For over 10 years, I supported my parents financially. I paid their mortgage, utilities, and covered both my siblings' tuition and expenses. I did this out of love, never asking for anything in return. Then, my parents updated their will and left me nothing. When I questioned it, they told me I didn't need anything because I had a career. My siblings, both of whom are unemployed and financially dependent, were rewarded for that dependency. When I stopped financing everyone, I was called greedy. When I demanded respect, I was threatened. My brother vandalized my home. My parents paid to make it go away. And now they've started a smear campaign saying I've abandoned them. Let me be clear. They are not losing their home. They are only losing free financial support. That's the truth. If you are being used by your own family, you are not alone. You do not have to suffer in silence. Boundaries are not betrayal. Love should never be a transaction. I hit post. Within an hour, the post had hundreds of likes, dozens of shares. The comments poured in, some kind, some cruel. "I've been through this too. Stay strong." "You did what you had to." "Wow. Who exposes their family like this? You're sick." "Family is forever. You'll regret this one day. But I didn't regret it, not even for a moment. 3 hours after the post went live, my mother called. "What the hell are you doing?" she barked before I could even say hello. "Calmly telling the truth," I said. "You're destroying your family's reputation." "No, Mom. You did that the moment you turned me into the villain in your story." "You'll regret this." "I doubt that." And I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from relief. For the first time, I had taken back my voice. 3 months passed. Silence never felt so loud, and peace never felt so unfamiliar. At first, it was strange, like something was missing. No constant messages, no last-minute phone calls about broken pipes or overdue utility bills. No one guilt-tripping me for missing holidays or accusing me of abandoning the family. Just me, my space, my time. It was the kind of quiet that felt like standing on a cliff, arms outstretched, with nothing to catch me if I fell. But I didn't fall. I flew. With my money finally mine, I signed up for a photography course. Something I'd put off for years because, "That's not practical, Natalie," or "We can't afford for you to waste time." Every Saturday morning, I roamed the streets of San Francisco, camera in hand, learning how to see the world through new angles. And I traveled, first to the Grand Canyon, then to Paris. I stood beneath the Eiffel Tower in the soft rain, a disposable camera around my neck, tears in my eyes, not because of the view, but because I had bought the ticket for myself. I wasn't tagging along on a family trip I paid for but didn't enjoy. I was here because I wanted to be. For once, I chose me. 6 months in, I hiked to the top of Machu Picchu. The wind was sharp and cold at that height, tugging at my jacket, my hair. I stood still, staring out across the ruins, the mountains rising like sentinels around me. And I whispered, "This is mine." Not the mountain, the moment. Everything I had sacrificed for others, my 20s, my savings, my sense of worth, had led to this, a moment that belonged to me and only me. Still, whispers of my old life reached me. Mutual acquaintances, old coworkers, childhood friends. They'd mentioned seeing one of my family members, offer updates I never asked for. That's how I found out about my mother. She'd taken a job at a diner across town. One of her former spa buddies saw her wearing a faded apron, hair pulled back, taking orders. No salon visits, no luxury purses, just tired feet and quiet resignation. Dad was working too, for the first time in years. Someone said he was doing inventory at a construction supply warehouse. The same man who once turned his back while I cried at the dinner table was now stacking bags of cement to make ends meet. Ethan? Unemployed. Again. After sealing my door shut and being forced to pay damages, he'd spiraled. Tried to launch a new tech startup. It flopped in 6 weeks. There was no Natalie to bail him out this time. Word was, he moved back in with Mom and Dad. From what I heard, the tension in that house could cut through brick. And Kayla, still trying to make it as an influencer. But with no one to buy her outfits, sponsor her getaways, or stage her perfect brunch shots, her social media clout dwindled fast. I came across her Instagram one day. Every post had a filter, every caption dripped with desperation. They were all struggling. And I was healing. It surprised me how little guilt I felt. A part of me had expected to mourn them, to miss the version of family I had always wanted them to be. But when I thought about going back, about stepping into that house again, I didn't feel homesick. I felt suffocated. I didn't hate them anymore. I just didn't need them. 1 year after the dinner that broke me, I met Alex. He wasn't the kind of man who swept into my life with dramatic gestures or poetic lines. He came in gently, like rain after a drought. We met on a hiking trip organized by a friend. I was half expecting it to be a disaster, but instead, I found him waiting by the trailhead with a quiet smile and an extra water bottle. He didn't pry, didn't push. When I told him parts of my story, he just nodded. Not judging, not trying to fix it. Just listening. He didn't love me for what I could offer or for what I could give. He loved me as I was. Messy, recovering, still figuring it out. On a chilly December night, we stood together on my apartment balcony. The city lights sparkled below us like scattered stars, and his hand rested lightly on my back. "I don't need anything from you," he whispered. "I just want to know you." I didn't reply right away. I just stared into the distance, my eyes misty. Because in that moment, I realized something that stunned me. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. Not financially, not physically, emotionally. I didn't have to buy someone's approval. I didn't have to exhaust myself proving my worth. I didn't have to earn love. It was freely given. And that was worth more than every dollar I'd lost. Looking back now, I see the dinner not as the night my world ended, but as the night my real life began. The betrayal wasn't a punishment. It was a blessing in disguise. Getting cut from the will? The best gift they ever gave me. Because in losing them, I found myself. A year and a half later, I rarely thought about them, not because I was trying to forget, because I had finally let go. I had stopped checking their social media. I stopped responding to any mutual contacts who tried to update me on how my parents or siblings were doing. I didn't feel bitterness anymore, just a calm detachment. My life had shifted so far from theirs that we might as well have been in different galaxies. I had moved into a loft apartment in Sausalito, one with exposed brick walls and a view of the water. I took morning walks with a coffee in hand and joined a photography collective that displayed local work in galleries. I even sold a few of my prints, landscapes mostly, sometimes faces of strangers captured in spontaneous, quiet moments. I wasn't wealthy by billionaire standards, but for the first time, my money was mine, fully mine. I had no one calling at the end of the month asking for just a little help to cover groceries, gas, or unexpected repairs. I had built something beautiful from the wreckage, and in the middle of that piece, a letter arrived. It wasn't from them. It was from a law firm in Sacramento. The envelope was thick, too formal to be spam. I opened it carefully, sitting on the floor, the winter light soft through the windows. The letter was short, less than half a page. Kiki. But the message was clear. My mother had passed away. A heart attack, sudden, in the middle of a shift at the diner. The firm was managing her estate, what was left of it, and the letter was informing me, the estranged daughter, of her passing. I wasn't mentioned in the will. Again, no final words, no apology, just paperwork and a clinical signature. I read it twice, then a third time, and I didn't cry. I thought I might, that maybe something inside me would split open, that old grief would find its way back in, but there was nothing left to break. I folded the letter, tucked it back into the envelope, and set it on the table. Later that evening, Alex came home to find me making tea. He glanced at the envelope, saw the firm's logo, and asked softly, "Are you okay?" I nodded. "She's gone." He didn't press, just walked over and wrapped his arms around me from behind. We stood there for a while, his resting against my temple, the kettle humming in the background. I was okay. I was better than okay. The next day, I went for a walk by the marina. The sky was overcast, the sea choppy. I passed a woman pushing a stroller, a young couple arguing playfully over the best place for brunch, and an older man sketching seagulls on a notepad. Life. Just life. I sat on a bench for a long time, watching the world move, feeling its rhythm again. And I thought about everything that had happened. I thought about how I once let people drain the very core of me, mistaking obligation for love. I believed that if I gave enough money, time, and energy, they'd finally see me, finally appreciate me. But they didn't. And I finally realized that was never my failure. They had the chance to love me back. They chose not to. They chose convenience, comfort, control. And when they lost it, they turned cruel instead of remorseful. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But I had stopped bleeding a long time ago. Now there was only a scar, and a reminder of how far I'd come. I picked up my phone and opened my camera app, snapping a photo of the waves crashing into the rocks. A simple shot, but it caught the wind, the motion, the freedom. I sent it to Alex with a message. Dinner at 7? He replied with a heart emoji and the words, wouldn't miss it. I smiled. That night we cooked together. Something simple. Rosemary chicken, garlic bread, a salad. We ate at the kitchen counter, laughing at nothing in particular. There was music playing low from the speaker, something indie and soft. I looked at him, really looked. He didn't complete me. He didn't fix me. He just chose me. And in return, I chose him. I looked around at our little home, our books stacked on each other's shelves, 2 mugs drying near the sink, a film roll waiting to be developed on the desk. This was the life I built. Not the one I inherited, not the one I paid for with sacrifice, the one I earned with courage. And in that moment, I realized I had lost my family, but I had found love. I had lost a name in a will, but I had found freedom. And as the winter night folded around us, I stepped out onto the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, the city glowing quietly beneath the stars. I whispered into the night, "Thank you for cutting me out," because it was the only way I could finally become whole. Natalie's journey began with betrayal, a shocking revelation at what was supposed to be a warm family dinner. Her parents had cut her out of their will, leaving everything to her younger, dependent siblings. What followed was a whirlwind of pain, confrontation, and finally, liberation. Natalie realized she had been used for years, not loved, not appreciated, but financially depended on like a bottomless ATM. When she stood up for herself, her family turned cruel, mocking her, sabotaging her home, and blaming her for their unraveling. But Natalie held firm. She took legal action, exposed the truth publicly, and most importantly, she set boundaries. The result wasn't peace at first. It was a heavy silence, an uncomfortable void. But eventually, it became the sweetest kind of freedom. With no one left to fund or fix, Natalie rediscovered joy in the things she had long sacrificed: photography, travel, love, and self-worth. Her toxic family struggled without her, but she no longer carried their burdens. Instead, she built something new, brick by brick, on her terms. Natalie's story isn't just about betrayal, it's about rebirth, about realizing that love without respect isn't love at all. That family, if it cost you your peace, isn't worth the title, and that sometimes the greatest gift others can give you is letting you go. Because walking away isn't failure, it's survival. And sometimes, the end of one story is the quiet beginning of a better one where you're no longer someone else's lifeline, but the writer of your own life.